If I were to ask you which element is most important to a story, which would you pick? The plot, the settings, the characters, the theme? I could go on, but I bet you already have your answer. I bet at least half of you are thinking of the characters. In my opinion, most elements are equally important and each one can shine more than others depending on the story. To be completely honest with you, my favorite element is plot, with characters and setting being close seconds, but most people consider the characters to be the most important because they get invested in them. Some people see themselves in certain characters, while others may only care for a story to see the outcome of a character's arc. There are many reasons why characters are important to readers, watchers, or in The Last of Us's case, gamers. The Last of Us has some of the most intriguing characters in any video game I have ever played, and there are a lot of things that Naughty Dog has done to achieve this. One plot device that is commonly used in these games is the foil character. A foil character is one that highlights certain traits in another character through their similarities and differences. Some of my favorite foil characters from other stories include Negan from The Walking Dead, Reiner and Zeke from Attack on Titan, Gaara from Naruto, and Beat from The World Ends With You. I briefly discussed foil characters in my analysis on Joel a few months ago, in which I compared him to Bill and Henry. Because of that, I'm keeping them out of today's video. I will put a link to my Joel analysis video in the description for those who want to watch it. As for the foil characters in this video, number 6, Marlene. There are so many differences between Marlene and Joel that most players may not notice their similarities right away. Marlene is the leader of the Fireflies, Joel keeps his distance from nearly everyone around him. Marlene does all that she can to make the world a better place in her eyes, while Joel doesn't care to make a difference to the world around him in any way. Marlene is public enemy number 1, and Fedra doesn't even bother knowing who Joel is unless he does something like this. The one thing that these characters have in common is their connection to Ellie. Marlene knew Ellie since she was born, being friends with her mother, and always looked out for her, despite the immune girl not even knowing who she was until she became a teenager. Throughout The Last of Us Part 1 and in the flashbacks of Part 2, Joel also looked out for Ellie, and in a way, both he and Marlene can be seen as parental figures to her. They both cared for her and wanted what was best for her. While Marlene was persuaded by Jerry to allow Ellie to die in order to have a chance at creating a cure to the cordyceps, she also made this decision believing that it was what Ellie would have wanted, and ended up being correct. This was very selfless of her compared to Joel, who really wanted to save Ellie for himself, not caring about what she may have wanted, nor all of the people who could still become infected. While both Joel and Marlene cared for the immune girl in similar ways, the decisions that they made that would not only impact her fate, but the fate of mankind can be seen as opposites. Number 5, Riley. Riley and Ellie share very similar backgrounds, both being orphans that are brought to a military boarding school that they do not wish to be in. They are both rebellious and do not get along with others easily. They are both determined to do things that they feel the need to do, no matter the consequences. What makes them foil characters to each other is the connection that each of them shared with the Fireflies. In the American Dreams comic, Ellie and Riley met Marlene at the same time. Riley desperately wanted to join the organization, while Ellie didn't care to become a Firefly, despite her having a stronger connection to Marlene than Riley did. At first, Marlene didn't take Riley seriously, but after a series of tests, Marlene allowed her to join them. Her final test was to leave Boston and potentially never see Ellie again, so Riley decided to visit her crush one last time, which would ultimately result in her becoming infected and dying, and Ellie learning about her immunity. After Ellie told Marlene what happened, the Fireflies desperately needed the immune girl, which was the opposite to how they initially saw her friend. Despite this, Ellie still didn't become a Firefly and only planned to help them create a vaccine. While Riley needed the Fireflies to feel free, Ellie would have been happier just being around a small group of people who cared for her, so it was quite ironic that Ellie ended up being immune rather than Riley. Number 4, Jerry. Joel and Jerry are two sides of the same coin. Get it? Because Jerry likes coins? I'm so funny. But in all seriousness, Jerry always cared to help others, unlike Joel. Jerry wanted to do as much good as he possibly could have, even for animals, such as when he saved the zebra who recently gave birth. The only bad thing that we know he did, if you consider it to be a bad thing, was when he was going to perform the surgery that would have killed Ellie. Shortly prior to that, we learned in The Last of Us Part 2 that if the roles were reversed and Abby were the one immune, Jerry would not have gone through with the surgery. In his confrontation with Marlene, she asks him how he would feel if he had to choose between Abby and the rest of the world, and it is obvious that he would save his own daughter. Abby walks in and tells him that she would want him to perform the surgery, which is exactly how Ellie felt, but Jerry sees that hypothetical scenario the same way that Joel did. The biggest difference between these two fathers is that Jerry would help as many people as he could, having more faith in them, as long as doing so wouldn't hurt Abby, while Joel, who doesn't trust as easily, would stay away from most people in order to ensure his daughter's safety. Number 3. Owen and Manny. Unlike the others on this list, these Salt Lake crew members foil each other rather than one of the main characters. They were both Fireflies who joined Wolf and took opposite paths in life. Manny was very loyal to Wolf, and especially his friends in the group, taking on any challenge and fighting any enemy of theirs. He had no problem killing anyone who seemed like a threat to him if it meant keeping his loved ones safe. He would also try to peacefully resolve any conflict that the people he cared for had, especially when they were against one another. Owen, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. He created conflict in the group, especially between Abby and Mel, and put his feelings before anyone else's. Because of this, when his beliefs didn't align with Wolf's, he stopped being loyal to the group. He didn't care for the conflict between them and the Seraphites, and did all that he could for Lev and Yara. Out of all of the scenes in The Last of Us Part 2, the one that best shows how Manny and Owen foil each other is immediately after Joel's death. Manny turns around after spitting on Joel's corpse, ready to kill Ellie, but Owen stops him, saying that they only came to kill Joel. Manny thinks it's a risk to leave Ellie and Tommy alive, but Owen thinks it would be wrong to kill them. Most of the Salt Lake crew members agree with Manny, but Abby orders them all to leave Joel's loved ones alive. Seeing as how Owen and Manny are barely seen together throughout the game, this was a great scene as it told us a lot about the two characters. They went on the same journey and had the same goal, but they still took opposing positions on how to handle the unexpected. Number 2. Tommy. Tommy is arguably Joel's best foil in the series. Being brothers who worked together prior to Outbreak Day, they obviously had a very similar background. However, the ways they handled living among the infected were quite different, which causes them to have opposing character arcs. After Joel lost Sarah, he stopped having faith in the world. He became cruel and bitter, doing whatever was necessary for him and Tommy to survive, no matter who was hurt in the process. Tommy, on the other hand, still had faith and wanted to do everything he could to make the world a better place. He joined the Fireflies, which caused a lot of tension between him and Joel. Due to their views on the world, the Miller brothers would eventually cut ties. Joel would go on to live in the Boston QZ and only let himself get close to a couple of people, while his younger brother went to Jackson after leaving the Fireflies. At Jackson, Tommy helped build a community and became one of the town's leaders along with his wife, Maria. During Joel's journey in the first game, he went to a damn near Jackson and the Miller brothers reunited. The two learned of the lives they had been living since their fallout. Joel, believing that his younger brother still wanted to make a big impact on the world, tried to convince him to finish his mission, delivering Ellie to the Fireflies. But Tommy had changed. He understood that he couldn't make the huge difference he had wanted in the past, and that his time was better spent by giving all of his focus to bettering the lives of those around him. They had become his priority, and so, in a way, Tommy became more similar to Joel than the idealistic Firefly he once was. Joel, who had always done everything he could to protect the few people he cared about, chose to save Ellie instead of the rest of the world, which is the opposite from the choice he would have once expected Tommy to make. Joel and Ellie would go to Jackson at the end of the first game and live there for the next few years. During this time, we see how Joel changes and starts to act more like Tommy. He opens up to more people and does everything he can to help the town. However, this would inevitably lead to his death. While he and Tommy were on patrol, Joel noticed a girl who was getting attacked by a herd of infected. Joel saved her, and the three fought their way to safety, at least from the runners. Abby was a threat herself and killed Joel, causing Tommy to walk on a dark path. In order to kill Abby and her friends, Tommy had to do terrible things similar to what Joel had done in the past. Tommy even turned against some of the people he had cared about, like Ellie and Dina, ultimately becoming very similar to his brother in the beginning of the first game, a bitter man who rarely gets close to others. Tommy is easily one of the best foil characters I have ever seen. Number 1. Abby. The reason why Abby is at the top of this list is that, unlike the other characters, she is a foil to both Joel and Ellie. Very similar to Joel, her story begins with the death of a beloved family member as Sarah died in Joel's arms and Abby lost Jerry. Abby handled her grief in a very different way than Joel had, surrounding herself with friends along with a bigger community by becoming a wolf. However, by doing this, Abby inevitably walked on a dark and violent path similar to the one Joel was on. They both killed a lot of people and ruined relationships that they had with others, such as Tommy and Mel. However, a child eventually came into both of their lives that they would care for and protect. Abby's relationship with Lev is very similar to the one Joel had with Ellie, especially since if it weren't for these two children, both Joel and Abby probably never would have had their redemption arc. However, their redemption arcs are very different. Joel wanted nothing to do with Ellie at first, but as he grew closer to her and let her become part of his life, he began seeing her as a daughter who he would do anything for. Unlike Joel, Abby grew fond of Lev immediately, as he didn't remind her of Jerry the same way that Ellie reminded Joel of Sarah. There was less tension between the wolf and the Seraphite as they worked together to leave their groups behind and search for the Fireflies. As I had mentioned earlier, Abby is also a foil of Ellie's. The main thing that they have in common is that they put their goals above anything else. In the first game, Ellie did everything she could to find the Fireflies, no matter how difficult the journey was. The result of Ellie and Joel's journey caused Abby to want to avenge Jerry more than anything, and once she achieved this goal, Ellie followed the same path her enemy did. They even went so far as to put their missions before their comrades, as Abby became an enemy to Wolf in order to help Yara and Lev, and Ellie was willing to abandon the friends who accompanied her if it meant finding Abby. However, the ways that each of them handle certain situations is quite different. Sharing Ellie's time in Seattle, she kills a lot of people and feels horrible for some of them, as seen after she murdered Nora and when she discovered that Mel was pregnant. Abby, who had also killed a lot of people, doesn't show signs of remorse towards her victims. With saying that, however, Abby is willing to let people go more than Ellie is. She ordered the rest of the Salt Lake crew to spare Ellie and Tommy and chose to walk away from her enemies when Ellie got her revenge. While the immune girl did eventually let the former wolf go, it took her a lot longer to make this decision, despite her doing much worse things to Abby than were done to her. Prior to sparing Abby, Ellie didn't care to keep any of her friends alive, and even threatened to kill Lev, who was completely innocent and even saved her life. On top of that, Abby is more trustworthy and cared more about her friends than Ellie did. Even though Abby betrayed Wolf, she still stayed loyal to the Salt Lake crew, while Ellie proved to not care much about Jesse or Tommy and even walked out on Dina. Ironically, Abby was much more social, and all of the people she was closest to ended up dying, while Ellie betrayed and abandoned the few people who cared about her. There are many parallels throughout The Last of Us that highlight the similarities and differences between characters, and I think that this series has some of the best foils in any story that I have ever experienced. Who is your favorite foil? Let me know in the comments, along with what you thought of this video, and have an amazing couple weeks until next time. Thanks for watching.